Hello, and welcome to the Authentically Elisa podcast, Unmasking Your True Self. I'm Elisa Bogarts, your guide on this journey to discovering the most genuine version of yourself. Each episode is a step towards unveiling the incredible power that lies within you as we strip away all the shoulds and shine a light on the coulds. Together we'll explore the path of self-empowerment, self-confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically you. Thank you for being here. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about the non-conscious mind, what it is, what it does, and why. And today, my guest is Melinda Mezsaros, and she's a dear friend of mine and a neighbor here in Vancouver. Melinda is a former academic turned energy worker. She holds PhDs in neuroscience and psychology and is dedicated to teaching about the brain, the mind, and being human in an understandable and lighthearted way. Melinda also incorporates her scientific understanding into practicing and teaching her energy work, which is just totally awesome. Welcome, Melinda.
Thank you very much for having me, Lisa.
Yeah, so glad that we're doing this. So yeah, tell us about how you got into this field of work and just why you're so passionate about it.
Well, I really started going off the beaten scientific path about 20-ish years ago. And that happened after my family experienced health issues that were not really addressable by what my background allowed me to understand. So I was looking for alternative modalities, therapies, diets, fasts, acupuncture, you name it, we tried it. And through all of this searching, naturally, I happened on energy work. And first I was, of course, very skeptical. It's like, yeah, how really? Why? How would this work? And then on a whim, I said, okay, there's this thing called Reiki. It's very popular. Let's go and see what happens. So I took a Reiki course. I became a Reiki master because when I start something, I like to do it all the way. And that was my first exposure to energy work. And I was just really curious what the experience of it is, because it's really hard to wrap one's head around energy work without releasing the disbelief of, oh, this can't work, right? How can anything that somebody just puts their hand on you and suddenly you will be better or calmer? How can that work? And without experiencing it, it's really, really hard to accept that that is actually happening. But even though Reiki didn't stay with me as a healing modality, I kept on trying different things and moving on. And at some point, I encountered this technique that, after having had a session with a practitioner, found extremely effective. And it's a very, very analytical, systematic method of having a conversation with one's subconscious. And the power of it is that the answers come through the body. So people self-muscle test or use the pendulum or use a truth test in order to ascertain whether or not the belief that they are having consciously in mind is what the subconscious is also holding. And very often it turns out that what we think we believe is not exactly what our belief is deep down. And this can cause conflicts in decision-making, in behaviors. It can lead to repeating patterns of behavior that people just can't shed. Traumas show up this way. So once you start, I can say, digging into the subconscious, it is very revealing what are all the blocks and obstacles to people's moving forward and doing what they intend to do. So very often people talk about limiting beliefs. And yes, there are limiting beliefs that we can think of. We can remember what our parents or a teacher told us that was really demeaning and something that we hold to this day. For example, you will never amount to anything. But at the same time, we may hold similar beliefs subconsciously that we are totally not aware of. And many of these beliefs come from our pre-verbal ages. So before we even learned language. So all of these are kept in our bodies, in our tissues. And for example, and we know that the body, the physical body, holds a lot of beliefs and emotions, because think about most people who had a massage or some other body work done, very often they break down, they have emotional reactions after or during the work. So that's the manifestation of the fact that our bodies hold a lot of our emotional experiences. And there's also scientific evidence, plenty of it, that the same molecules that signal emotions in the brain are equally present in the body, in the rest of the body. So there's a extremely tight connection between the brain and the body when it comes to emotion. And most of our subconscious beliefs that are relevant have emotional charge. So when we go and ask the body rather than the brain or the mind, what we believe, we get much more accurate answers. So when I found this technique, I found it really intriguing, and my analytical mind just jumped on it like there's no tomorrow. I enjoyed the fact that it's an unknown. Every session is an unknown. There is a protocol that I follow, but where we go is really up to the client's subconscious. They don't know where we will go. So this exploratory work, this how can I say it's almost like reading a mystery novel to see into somebody's subconscious. So it just suited my way of thinking, given that I'm a researcher both by nature and by training. So I fell in love with this technique. I learned it. I taught it in the original program for a while, and then I started out on my own. I developed the technique further, added a lot more things to it, wrote new protocols. So yeah, that's my not so brief story about how I got into this.
It's so cool. And I think it's something that can be difficult, I think, maybe to tap into, or like you were just saying about how people maybe don't believe it because so many of us are so stuck in our heads, and it was like kind of like that mind body connection, like it's there, but we're not really tapped into it. And it always was interesting to me, like sometimes in like a yoga class or something, I remember someone said like, oh, whenever I stretch my hips, I like start crying. And I was like, that's weird. But but I think that's what you were talking about, right? It was like trapped in there, something's going on. And I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was talking about. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is a way with this technique, for example, there's a way to go down and see what it is that they are holding in their hips and release that energy.
It's so cool. So tell me, what does authenticity mean to you?
What it means to me is to always feel comfortable with who I am in the moment. To really reflect my inner self rather than defer to outside judgment or opinions. I have to feel good in my skin. And if I am, then I'm authentic and I am true to myself.
That's such a wonderful, I love that, because it's so true. And just think of myself like at times where I, like something's, I don't know, say happening or I have to do something. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to, but I do. Or like, I find myself doing something that's more, people pleasing or habitual or what I've done before, but I know that it's not what I want or how I'm responding, So in my mind, I have this like dilemma going on, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's I just love how you said that. It was like, okay, well, obviously by doing this people pleasing or what I've been sort of my habitual patterns isn't making me comfortable. So actually where I do feel most comfortable is in that authentic state. And I think that's a really good thing to think about when you are gonna, at least for me, when I'm having that dilemma in my head, be like, okay, well, where am I most comfortable? Most comfortable in this. Oh yeah, okay, then that's me being my true authentic self. So that's actually what I should choose or decide or move forward with.
Yes. And over time, most people develop a visceral sensation of what it feels like to be their true self.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of being that I cannot explain, cannot put my finger to it. But I feel it in my full body by now. But I've been around the block long enough to do that. So it takes time to develop. But as you say, yes, think about what makes you feel, whether or not you feel comfortable in your skin in any given moment. And if you do, you are authentic or close to it.
I love that. So let's talk about these non-conscious mind things. I think that maybe, I don't know if maybe you're the first person that I heard that through, but like I hear the terms kind of, and to me, they're like interchangeable, like unconscious mind, subconscious mind, non-conscious mind. I'm always like, I have no idea what the difference is. So can you tell us talk to us about the non-conscious mind and like your sort of like framework structure around it, like what it is, and then how it's different from the
Okay.
subconscious and the unconscious.
So it's not really surprising that the terms seem confusing because they are.
Thank you.
And it has to do with the traditions within psychology, because the first person who used the term subconscious mind was Freud. And his psychodynamic theory was very, very popular for a while. And then it was made very unpopular. So talking about the subconscious became kind of a peripheral term, and it was taken up by the New Age community, the spiritual community. And through that, both of those effects led it to be not really used within academia, where the research was done around things outside of conscious awareness. So within academia, the term became unconscious or non-conscious, which were used really interchangeably. So the ice is melting more and more. The term subconscious is seeping back into academic articles and research, but there is no consensus on what means what. So given that, I just created my own framework for the work that I do. And within so that's how I work, and that's how I explain things. It doesn't mean that I'm right. It may change as better understanding comes along, but for now, that's a working framework. So the way I think of it is that everything that is outside of conscious awareness belongs to the non-conscious mind. The aspect of the non-conscious mind that is closest to the conscious I term it as pre-conscious, because that's the kind of information that we can easily access. Our conscious mind can hold 7 ± 2 items in mind and in place at any given moment. So, for example, we can remember a 7-digit phone number, more or less, right?
Right.
But we can easily remember what we ate for lunch if we think about it, which means that we focus attention from the phone number to the lunch, but not both at the same time. So any information that is easy to remember is in the preconscious mind. And then the other two aspects of the non-conscious mind are the subconscious and the unconscious in my framework.
Okay.
The unconscious mind holds automated processes that are either pre-wired, built in, or ones that we acquire as we grow up. For example, walking, driving a car, riding a bike, cutting carrots. All of these motor movements or brushing teeth, right? Habitual things that we do without thinking are all in the unconscious. Also, there are memories that are deeply buried, are repressed. This is where I would put memories of deep traumas that people cannot access. And everything else that the brain does, that happening in the mind that we really, really cannot think of, no matter what we do.
Does that include like breathing?
Yes. Yeah. All the control of automated processes to maintain the body functions.
Okay.
So all goes there. That is automatic, that we don't access, we don't need to or can't. And then there is the subconscious mind, which is where most of the action is happening when we do exploration of the non-conscious. And subconscious is mostly holding beliefs, judgments, memories that we collected throughout our life and that we inherited. That's an interesting thing, that we can inherit certain subconscious aspects of ourselves.
Really? Wow.
Through epigenetics, yes, it's very, very interesting.
Huh.
But just so the subconscious beliefs, these are mostly beliefs. They're pieces of information, memories that build our world, inner world, and our understanding of the outer world. And it starts to happen the moment we are born. So if you think about babies, at the moment they can move, they experiment with things. For example, a 6-month-old would start dropping things out of a crib and watching what happens, right? They are developing an intuitive understanding of physics, of how gravity works. They cannot verbalize it, but they know how the physical world works.
I just thought they were being brats.
Yes. No, it actually is very purposeful and it's very useful for them. The same with interactions with people. They feel from the tone of the voice of the parents or others around them or other children, through emotions, they internalize how the social world works, how relationships work. And most of this happens before we are 6 or 7 years old. So by the time we are school age, we have a very well-established belief system in our subconscious that guides us in reacting to the outside world and in dealing with ourselves.
That's so crazy to me because, like, we're so young. Like, it's like, but you don't even understand how the world works. You're just kind of like making up all these things and like creating this little world for yourself.
Let me give you an example. For example, there's a kid, let's call him Bobby, and he's jumping in the puddles. He gets all muddy. So depending on how his caregiver, could be a mother or nanny or grandma, reacts to him being all muddy but happy, he can internalize either. So if the caregiver's reaction is, oh, great, I'm going to join you, this is lots of fun, we'll go home and clean up, Bobby will be feeling that, oh, this is totally okay to be myself, to be cool, it's okay to be happy, it's okay to do what I like, I'm accepted, I'm loved. The other reaction could be that, oh, Bobby, again, you are dirty again, I'll have to do laundry, oh my God, Bobby, let's just go home. This is so what is Bobby going to internalize? That it's not okay to have fun, it's not okay to do what I like, I'm not accepted the way I am. I'm not worthy of having this because the laundry is more important. And these things can happen way before Bobby could speak. So these are the kinds of beliefs, limiting beliefs, that people cannot access through journaling or through reflection because they cannot put words to it. It's way, way deeper than that.
Ugh.
Yes, but it's also fascinating. For me, it's
fascinating. Yeah, it is. It's totally fascinating.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
So when with my scientific mind, I discovered this world, it was the most tantalizing and exciting place to be. So this makes me really passionate about the technique and working with the subconscious and teaching people about it and teaching people the technique, because it's such an easy way to access this and shift these beliefs.
Good. That's excellent news. Because we don't want to hold that, because it's like everything as you were describing that, right? The bad reaction from the caregiver, all those things like, oh, this is so awful. Like, we don't want those, it's not necessarily true. And Yeah, but they really can affect our entire lives and the decisions that we make. And yeah, like you were saying before, like, if we want to do something, that's what kind of can hold us back because we have
Yes.
these subconscious beliefs. So what's the non-conscious mind? Like
So the
what are
non-conscious
the
mind is everything that I told you about.
hmm,
It's everything that the brain does. So the mind is, think of the mind as representations that the brain creates. Some people call them schemas. Some people call them images. It really depends on the tradition in psychology what you call them. But everything that is not within our conscious awareness, which, as I said, is really, really limited, is the realm of the non-conscious mind. So it's hard to measure, but all attempts that have been made to measure the capacity of the non-conscious mind to relative to the conscious one came up with many, many orders of magnitude difference in their processing capacity. So given that our conscious mind can handle 7 plus minus items in any given time, roughly 90 to 99% of everything our brain does
mhm.
happens outside of conscious awareness. And that's what I call the non-conscious mind. And as I say, that's divided then into the automated processes in the unconscious, the belief systems and memories in the subconscious, and the preconscious, which are the easily accessible memories.
And so the purpose of the non-conscious mind is to keep us safe, right? And it's like,
Yes.
what does it do to achieve that?
So if you think about it, the conscious mind is the crowning achievement of evolution in that we are the only animal species that has it. Well, probably, maybe dolphins, maybe. But the kind of self-awareness and consciousness that we have is unique to us.
Mm-hmm.
But our brain did not change by developing that. It was an addition to it. So we still carry all the processes that we needed during our evolution. And the non-conscious mind, the brain, in an animal brain, is there for two reasons for the animal. To keep it safe, in that to make sure that it eats dinner, it doesn't become something else's dinner, and to keep it out of trouble, and to make it reproduce, to keep the species going. So these are the animal brain's major tasks, right?
Yep.
Keep the individual safe and keep the species safe. That did not change. And to this day, our non-conscious mind's primary goal is to keep us safe. And very often, it still does. Like, for example, in the past, we needed to recognize a lion in the grass, in the savannah, and run, right? So that we would not become lion fodder. These days, our brains are trained to notice a bus coming our way so we can jump out of its way. And we do this non-consciously. Our senses monitor the environment all the time, and we process that information non-consciously. And if you ever jumped out of the way of, say, a bicycle, you will know that you jumped before you were aware that you were jumping.
Yeah, or I've got it where I've like heard a loud noise and I'm like, ah, like as if it's falling on me or something. And like immediately react as if I'm like ducking. And I was like, oh, that was just, something way far away from me, or like, a plane in the sky or something like that. Like I wasn't actually in danger, but it was so loud that it scared me that I thought that something was going to hit me. And so I like cowered as if it was about to.
Yeah. So our bodies notice these things. We process this before we are consciously become aware of them. So it still keeps us safe in this regard, and that's what it does. So very often it happens that what we consciously want contradicts what our unconscious thinks we should be doing. And that can happen, this kind of discrepancy can show up around eating. for example. But the non-conscious mind influences us through evolution, right? It's just the physical safety is important. That's paramount. But also the stuff that we learned during building our subconscious beliefs and memories, that also influences how we react to things. So that's compounding, like it's adding together what our non-conscious thinks is safe. For example, to go back to Bobby in the puddle example, so Bobby will think that jumping in a puddle is not safe, because if he does, then he will be scolded and not loved anymore, right? Having fun is not safe.
Yeah, so sad.
Yeah. So these kinds of beliefs build up, and then we are influenced in any given moment through our non-conscious mind, through our senses monitoring the environment, and also what our goals are. For example, research shows that if your goal is to, say, have this research was done with students, as most psychological research is done. So if a student had the goal of upping their GPA by the end of the semester, they started to hang out with students who were very good students, who studied a lot, were part of study groups. If their goal was to find a date by the end of the semester, then they were hanging out with groups that were going out to party, to going to sporting events, doing a lot of the socializing. And none of that was consciously done. The students were asked about their goals at the beginning of the semester and then asked about their social affiliations at the end of the semester. So in every step of the way, we are influenced by what is going on in our unconscious, as I said, with both its past, evolutionary and personal past, the present, and the future through our goals. So there is no escaping it. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I think the best way that we can do is be aware that it exists, be aware how it functions, what its goals are, if possible, do our belief work, because it can move the needle in a lot of ways. And really, once we are aware, once we listen to our non-conscious mind, once we recognize its doings, we are able to mitigate sometimes or change. That's how we really become fully aware, and that's the way we can make fully intentional choices.
It's crazy to think that we don't make intentional choices. I mean, like we do, but you're like all this is there that just stops it. And you're like, what?
Yeah. So we do have intentions.
Yeah.
And we do make the choices consciously, but they don't always pan out the way we intend them to.
No, exactly.
And so
all the time.
Yes, right. And so in order to have a smoothest possible path forward, I think it's very important to bring into alignment the conscious and the non-conscious minds. Understand the non-conscious, accept it, that it's not there to hurt anyone. It's there. It evolved to keep us safe. It's still doing it. So we better make friends with it.
Yeah. I think that's the key. And what about do we have hardwired non-conscious information processing? Is there hardwire stuff and
yes,
difference between that and subconscious programs that we were acquired in the upbringing that you described?
Yes. So we have the most fundamental hardwired or we can built-in process is pattern recognition. So if you think about in the animal kingdom, the easiest way for animals to detect something is through vision or through their hearing. Oh, and of course, many of them smell, but think of just vision. Um, a movement in the jungle of leaves that is somehow signaling something moving, being there, right? It alerts them to a potential predator. Again, back to the lion and the savannah, right? The colors, how is the grass changing when a lion is hiding behind it? That noticing that pattern is really, really important. And then patterns allow us also to predict things. It's very important for anticipating things happening. And it is one of the most fundamental cognitive processes that we have. In fact, many say that our brain is the most powerful pattern recognition machine out there at the moment. So that's a very, very important part that it does. The other thing that is built in are shortcuts. So despite this huge processing capacity that our non-conscious has, the available information that it would need to process is still much, much larger. So it has to filter all the information that's hitting it and really be careful of how much of that it's processing. So even though it's very powerful, there are still limits on it, both in terms of how much information it can process and within what time frame and at what expense. And by this, I mean energy. The brain at rest uses 20% of the body's energy, even though it's 2% of its weight.
Really? 20%?
At rest. So when you are studying or learning something or really paying attention to something, it's even more. So the brain cannot run out. So if the brain is low on energy, it will not function very well.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a limitation. Then too much information hitting it, that's also no good. So it has to filter, it has to sort, and on top of it, it uses shortcuts. There are pre-wired shortcuts that we are using. These are called heuristics in decision making. For example, information that we heard recently or very frequently, or it is very emotionally charged or sensational, will be in our mind. We will think of that very, very easily, and it will influence our decisions substantially. For example, if you, just an easy everyday example. So let's say you go to the grocery store and want to buy your favorite bread, and they are out of it. So there are other options. You're looking at them. So what should I buy? You are short on time, so you're not reading labels. What are you going to buy? You're going to buy the bread whose advertisement you saw most recently or more frequently. Or if you haven't seen any because you don't pay attention to advertising, then you will buy the one that most reminds you of the one of the bread that you usually buy.
Right.
And these are all things that we don't think about. These are split-second decisions that we make about everything. Which shirt am I going to wear today? You saw a bunch of people in purple and pink shirts yesterday, so maybe you will, reach for your magenta shirt or purple shirt.
Yeah.
Right? So these are all things that are out of our conscious awareness. We don't think about them. We can catch ourselves after the fact that, oh dear, why did I buy this bread? Oh, is it because it's all over the billboards? And think of Kinder Wonder Bread or Kinder Bread at the beginning of a school year, right?
Right.
So, these recent and frequent and sensational pieces of information very strongly influence how we make decisions. For example, why do people think that flying is so dangerous? Because every plane crash is big news. But statistically speaking, it's much more dangerous to drive.
Yeah,
so more people lose their lives in driving than in flying. Yet in people's minds, flying is considered more dangerous.
Right.
The same with shark attacks. So if people if people tend to notice shark attacks in the news, they will think that, oh my God, I mean, the beaches are shark infested. We should not go to the beach at all, which is not really true because there are really few, but there are all few shark attacks a year, but they are big news,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. So the
So,
probability is quite low.
yes, exactly. So this heuristic, which is called the availability heuristics, right? Available information, either because it's frequent or because it's recent or because it has an emotional charge, changes how we think about fact, right? And that influences how we make decisions. So unless we stop and think about the statistics, about the actual data, our split-second decisions will not reflect that because we're under the influence of this heuristic. And our brain developed these heuristics, not just this one, there are over 180 of them, to make itself more efficient, conserve energy, make it work faster. If you think about it, running away from a lion, there is no time to contemplate whether or not that's really a lion. It looks like a lion, let's run, right? Or in the store buying the bread, you're on a run, you need to feed the family, you need to make sandwiches. You are not reading labels or thinking. You grab the first thing that feels right, and what will feel right will be dependent on what information you saw recently, or how often did you see that.
That's so interesting. I had no idea. Thank you for sharing all that. It's just, yeah. I mean, yeah, I didn't realize that there was, yeah, how you can be so easily influenced
Yes.
to make
I mean, the
decisions.
availability heuristic is one of the most common ways in which our brain is manipulated.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking too, right? And like that's why like, advertisements are so popular and such money
Yes.
makers and like, yeah, that's so interesting.
Yes.
Oh, well, this has been just so awesome. We learned all about the non-conscious mind and how Melinda, with her sort of framework, breaks it down to like the pre-conscious, the unconscious, the subconscious, and learned about all the difference. And this is all within our non-conscious, and that its main purpose is really to keep us safe, and it always has been, and it still is. And so, therefore, we need to really accept that and learn how to work with it. And then we were just talking about this hardwired non-conscious information, these processes that happen to make our brains more efficient, to use less energy because it uses so much energy, our big brains. And I'm sure that we've all felt that at some point, we're just like, sometimes you feel like you're being hit with so much information. You're like, oh, just wait a second. What? Could you slow down? Like, or you're just going to wake up some mornings and you're like, oh, I've got brain fog, or oh, I just need some quiet time because my brain just feels full because it's taking up so much energy and so much processing because it's just always bringing in so much stuff. Well, thank you for all of this. So where can our listeners find you online?
My website is the best portal to find everything that I do.
Perfect. We'll have that in the show notes for sure.
Yes, and I have a page called Resources where I put all the free information. I'm beginning to self-discovery, so I have at the moment 3 quizzes.
Nice.
There will be information coming about my framework of the non-conscious mind and other things that I think are useful for people to know. These will be all free resources. I also teach courses, which you can explore under the courses tab. And there is an event tab coming soon where I will list all the live events and podcasts that I am at.
Perfect. And I love the resources, the quizzes, right? Who doesn't love a quiz? Go pick your favorite one and learn a little bit about yourself. So do you have any final words of wisdom to finish us off today?
I think, given the title of your show, I would just like to reiterate, the way to be authentic is to be comfortable with yourself. And maybe that needs to happen with a little bit of exploration in your subconscious to see what prevents you from being completely yourself, and how it is that you can shed your people-pleasing tendencies or other behaviors that really don't serve you, but you were trained to believe that they serve you. So yes, that's pretty much it. Find yourself, and it's all inside.
Yeah, it is inside. And like we were, I know that it was sort of like influenced as we were younger, but we like, our beautiful essence and our beautiful authentic self and like who we are truly was there from the beginning. And yes, it's been sort of built on top of and changed, but we can still access that and find that little one again and make it part of your current reality and shed all those things that just don't serve you anymore, that you don't want.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this show. So great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Elisa. And I hope that that this was not too much nerding out for your listeners.
Oh, I loved it. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it inspired you to live a more authentic life. I'd love your help in inspiring more people to live authentically. So please follow, rate, and leave a review so we can create a ripple effect of authenticity. Until next time, stay true to you, be bold, and thrive on your own terms. This is Elisa, signing off authentically.